All right, guys. Today we are going to be reacting to Andrew Wilson debates college feminists on can rights only be enforced with force? Let's jump in.
When you define feminism, would you define it as the pursuance of egalitarianism between men and women?
Yes.
No other real qualifiers?
Not for me. I do think it's difficult to define because I think that everyone kind of has their own definition. Mm-hmm. So when talking about it, it's difficult to discuss feminism as a monolithic thing. But yeah, I think it's a good working definition.
If it's a movement towards egalitarianism, this would imply that there was not egalitarianism, and so feminism was set in opposition to patriarchy.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay, so that's an entailment we can agree to.
Yeah.
So I'd like to start with a basic argument before I move to larger arguments. My first objection is what I call an equal force objection. Men are the enforcement arm of society. And because they are the enforcers of rights, and I don't believe that rights exist as an objective standard, but rather they're a social construction of the mind, what I think we actually have is what's called force, right? So force are rights. That's all rights really can be, because the entailment of a right is it's only as good as who can enforce it. I do not believe that women can enforce their own rights and that only men can enforce their rights. And so therefore, I do not believe egalitarianism is possible, nor should it be something that we move towards.
Mm-hmm. So you think that men are the enforcement arm in the sense that they enforce rights, or our conception of rights, or are you arguing that they're the enforcement arm as in they're enforcing law and order?
Well, let's back up to make sure that we're not speaking past each other again. Okay. So rights, you would agree, are not a tangible thing, but they're just a conception. They're
I agree with that.
A social construction.
Yes.
So if you are to have a right, an entitlement, absent a duty, if we can define a right as that, then what you're really talking about is force. You're talking about having force to make sure that you have this entitlement. That would be necessary. And so when I'm talking about force, I'm saying that men have the monopoly on force. And because they have a monopoly on force, anytime they so choose, they can take the rights away from women, but it's never possible the other way around.
I guess I would disagree that rights are only upheld through force. In this day and age, I think that it's easy to say that hypothetically men could turn against women and use brute strength and brute force to take away rights, but I think that it's easy to say that sorry. It's okay. I think that we have a pretty
Are you mocking her, Brian?
a pretty well-founded legal system that we use to uphold rights, or our conception of rights. I think I would disagree that rights are only force. I do agree that they are a social construction.
Your legal system is force.
I mean, the legal system, yes, it's force. It's coercion, but I think...
Well, no, it's not just coercion, it's force. So yeah. if absent you doing whatever the legal system determines you must do, what is the remedy?
I mean, that's a good point. I just think that... Do you think that rights are enforced, physically?
Yes.
Do you think that men... Okay.
Physically.
Could you give me an example of that? Because I think I don't really fully understand.
If you want to make an appeal that your rights are in some way being taken away from you, or your rights in some way are being violated, who would you make the appeal to?
That's a good point. That's good.
Supreme Court? I don't know.
And so let's assume whoever you make this appeal to on a court agrees with you.
Supreme Court.
They're going to be able to use the power of their office to appeal to brute force in order to defend or take your right away. So if I want to send you to prison, I'm taking your rights away, right? Does that require force? Physical force?
Yes.
And does it require physical force to keep you there?
Yeah, I would say that taking someone to prison and keeping someone in prison does require physical force. But I mean, I guess abortion rights, it's a very recent... I fail to see how... the right to get an abortion, maybe not the right, because obviously punishing someone who performs an illegal abortion involves taking someone to prison, but how is the right to an abortion upheld by physical force?
Well, because if you go to get an abortion, okay, and somebody comes in to stop you from getting an abortion, meaning they're going to stop you from exercising that right, if that's a right you believe you have, wouldn't you make an appeal to men with guns to come in and stop them from stopping you from doing that?
And there we go. And that's the problem right there. That's a problem right there. Why is that a problem? Because at the end of the day, females are always gonna appeal to enforcement. Who does enforcement? Men. That's the problem right there.
Okay, I think I understand what you mean now. I think I didn't fully understand what you mean. But, I mean, in that case, women can train to use weaponry and use guns. I mean, we have weaponry now that can kind of fill the gap between men and women's.
Everything comes down to actual physical force. And let me explain what I mean. There's not one time in history ever that you can point to where women have been able to collectively use force in order to dominate men. However, every point in history I can almost point to where men can and have done
easily.
that. And the opposite cannot be true. Meaning that if men in even small collectives decide to take the rights away from women, there's not actually anything women can do about it. However, if women mildly and collectively, or in a small or large collective, try to take the rights away from men, there is something they can do about that.
But I do think that would require somehow taking weaponry out of the picture. I mean, but
you don't need to take weaponry out of the picture. Weapons require strength to use. Those who are strong can use them better. Not only that, field equipment weighs a lot, right? Equipment in general weighs a lot. You also have the endurance problem, the skeletal problems. You have the heat regulation problems. The distinctions between men and women are incredible. And so when you look at a force applicator, men have a monopoly on force. By the way, I can demonstrate this pretty easy. Western nations have become more egalitarian than they ever have been. You would agree, right?
Yeah.
But who still stays predominantly in these enforcement positions?
I mean, predominantly, yes, but
Why?
women... Well, obviously, I totally agree with you that there is a physical difference between men and women, and they are stronger. But I do think that the gap is significantly smaller with weaponry. I don't think it's fully, brought to an equal playing field. But I mean,
in other words, if
It
men,
would never happen. It would never happen, guys. It would never happen. The weapon is just an extension of who you are. It's just what it is. And you see this all the time. You see females that do BJJ with a guy that doesn't do BJJ. They get slammed in the floor easily, no problems. You know what I'm saying? We even saw it in the whatever podcast. Eric, it's a tall guy, no martial art, nothing. And then the lady will Krav Maga. He just picked it up like a little baby. And she was trained. Like, guys, for real, this is... At some point, reality had to kick in. Had to kick in, guys. But I don't think that's even a case. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen, guys. Because I don't think it's in female nature to do so.
men have weapons and women have weapons, women lose.
I mean, yeah, but there are women in law enforcement.
Yes.
There are female prison wardens, COs, things like that. So
And they are, and while there are some exceptional women, I agree, who can be inside of positions like this, there are some exceptional women. Maybe one day we'll have that first female Navy SEAL. Maybe it'll happen. Okay, it hasn't happened yet, but one day there will be an exceptional Navy SEAL, badass G.I. Jane type chick who can wear the skin-tight leather with the hand grenades and do the ninja kicks. But those are going to be exceptional cases.
I agree that they are exceptional cases, but you're saying, so men are the default enforcement arm of rights, of legal rights, but there are women in those positions, so I fail to see, and
Because
they are...
men can take them away from them collectively whenever they so choose. And they have no recourse, but men always do, which is force.
Collectively, sure, but I mean, there are still exceptions to that, so that there are women in those positions, and by and large, men are stronger than women, but there are weak men and there are strong women, and I feel that, I mean, the exceptions to those cases do present a problem.
But even weaker men, even much weaker men, are still usually stronger than even average women. And
I agree with that.
This is the problem with equalization. For instance, if you were to have a prison, okay, or, let's try this a different way. Let's say that you were a general in the armed forces, and you had a special forces unit which was compiled of 100% women and one that was compiled of 100% men. and you had a job which you absolutely had to get done, it was critical, it was mission critical, who'd you turn it over to?
I would turn it over to a man.
You turn it over to the men.
Exactly. That's the point.
Because they would be much more excellent performing those duties than women, right?
Yeah, and I can totally agree with you on that, but I do think that the presence of women in those positions, I mean, they are present in those positions. And also, I guess my question would be, do you think that the enforcement of rights is the most important part of a well-functioning society?
Yeah.
Like, do you think that is
the enforcement of law?
Yeah, because it's the only thing that we can get close to a concrete visualization of the concept of rights. It's the closest thing. Unless you cannot enforce those rights, it's very far from the truth as being one. Right now, what we have is just an illusion of rights, right? Females can do the same things. Females can, somehow they have the same authority and power as men, but they have zero responsibilities. You see it all over the place, especially with female politicians, right? I haven't seen a female politician just even get in prison, guys. They might be out there, but I haven't seen her. I mean, it's just we're giving these type of responsibilities, right, and power, and they're not. I don't think they're in a position of being accountable for those positions, and this is dangerous, guys, because this can go down quick.
Law and order is critical to society. So the Greeks said, without law, there is no freedom.
Yeah.
Right? You would agree that that's probably true. I don't see how you could really descend into anarchy and have actual freedom. It would just end up in like a slave eats slave oppressive,
Yep.
This type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that law and the enforcement of law and rights and the enforcement of rights or duties and the enforcement of duties are critical to a society. So
100%.
while I don't believe in the construction of rights because they don't really exist absent force, I do understand that having some kind of core belief towards something can be useful in keeping a cohesive society together. But I don't believe that women are capable of doing that. And so because they're not equal, they cannot be equal because of this. I don't understand why they should have equal rights to vote, why they should have equal rights to men, if they are not in the position where they can actually enforce their own rights and only men can.
I guess I fail to see how, women cannot physically enforce their own rights leads to
Because
women should not have equal rights, or
They can't. It's not real.
an egalitarian society is not possible because, I mean, even the way you said it, law and order is only one critical aspect of a well-functioning society. So if that's only one critical aspect, then how can you say, well, this one aspect and the fact that men are going to dominate this one aspect, they're not going to be the sole, that women will exist, but men will dominate this one aspect. How can you say that
Because they're
is
always going to
proof
be
that-
making the appeal to men for those rights. And there's no way around it.
Yeah, that's pretty much, man. Otherwise, there's no reason to even have those rights, right? Because they have to make the appeal. If you're equal too, but you have to make the appeal of. Why you have to make the appeal when you can just grab a bunch of women and just defend it? But you can't. You see what I'm saying? You have to appeal for it, which is an illusion. But let me know what you guys see in the comment section below. I would love to hear you guys' opinion. I will see you in the next one.